Welcome to Snooze Tales Studio. Hello, dear listeners. Tonight, we have a special story to help you drift into a world of dreams. Our tale is called A Day at the Cozy Bookstore. Settle in, relax, and let the gentle words carry you to a quaint little shop filled with the warmth of stories and a hint of magic. It was a quiet morning in the small town of Marigold when a soft rain began to fall, tapping gently against the windows and rooftops. The streets, normally bustling with activity, were empty save for the occasional passerby carrying an umbrella. It was the perfect kind of day to spend inside, and for many in Marigold, that meant a visit to the cozy bookstore at the corner of Rosewood Lane. The bookstore was nestled between a bakery and a flower shop, its red door adorned with a small brass bell that chimed sweetly whenever someone stepped inside. The windows were filled with displays of books of all sizes, their covers glowing softly under the golden lights. Inside, the scent of old paper, polished wood, and a hint of cinnamon from the nearby bakery lingered in the air, creating a sense of comfort and warmth. A young woman named Emma pushed open the red door, the bell above her giving a soft chime as she stepped inside. She was greeted by the familiar sight of shelves filled with books that reached up to the ceiling, each one brimming with stories waiting to be discovered. The shop was small, but it had a charm that made it feel as though it were much larger. There were nooks and corners where one could sit, tucked away from the world, lost in the pages of a good book. Emma loved this bookstore. She had grown up visiting it with her grandmother, who always seemed to know the best stories. Today, the rain had brought her here, and she was happy to find that the store was as cozy as ever. She walked slowly down one of the aisles, her fingers brushing against the spines of books, each one unique in its texture and color. She could hear the soft rustling of pages being turned, the gentle creak of floorboards, and the faint sound of jazz music playing from an old record player in the corner. The owner of the bookstore, a kind elderly man named Mr. Whitaker, stood behind the counter, sorting through a stack of newly arrived books. He looked up as Emma entered and gave her a warm smile. "Welcome back, Emma," he said, his voice as soft as the rain outside. "I've just put out a new collection of stories by the fireplace if you'd like to have a look." Emma returned his smile and made her way to the back of the store, where a small reading area was arranged around an old stone fireplace. The fire crackled gently, its warmth reaching out to embrace the room, casting flickering shadows on the walls. There were armchairs covered in soft blankets, and a stack of new books sat on a small wooden table. Emma chose a book with a deep blue cover, its title embossed in silver letters, The Dreamer's Tales. She settled into one of the armchairs, pulling a blanket over her lap, and opened the book. The pages were thick, and the words seemed to flow like a gentle stream, inviting her into another world. As she read, the sound of the rain outside faded away, replaced by the rustle of leaves in a forest, the distant call of a bird, and the soft murmur of a river. The words on the page painted vivid pictures in her mind, of enchanted woods, hidden pathways, and characters full of wonder. Time seemed to slip away as Emma read, her mind drifting further into the world of the story. The warmth of the fire, the softness of the blanket, and the comfort of the words lulled her into a state of deep relaxation. She could almost feel herself walking along the forest paths described in the book, her feet crunching on fallen leaves, the scent of pine and earth filling her senses. After a while, Emma closed her eyes, the book resting gently on her lap. She wasn't quite asleep, but she wasn't fully awake either. It was that perfect, dreamy in-between state where everything felt soft and peaceful. She could hear the crackle of the fire, the distant tap of rain against the windows, and the occasional rustle of a page being turned by another visitor. The bookstore felt like a world unto itself, a place where time moved slowly, and the worries of the outside world simply melted away. Mr. Whitaker watched from behind the counter, his kind eyes twinkling as he saw Emma drift off. He knew well the magic of a good story, how it could transport someone to far-off places and fill their hearts with warmth. He moved quietly around the store, adjusting books on the shelves, his footsteps barely making a sound on the old wooden floor. The rain continued to fall, the steady rhythm adding to the sense of calm that filled the bookstore. A cat that lived in the shop, a fluffy gray creature named Oliver, padded over to Emma's chair. He hopped up onto her lap, curling into a warm ball against the book she held. Emma smiled softly, her eyes still closed, as she felt the gentle weight of Oliver settling in, his purring a soothing lullaby. In that moment, everything was perfect. The warmth of the fire, the gentle purring of the cat, the soft rain outside, and the feeling of being surrounded by stories. Emma let herself drift further, her thoughts becoming lighter, her breathing slowing as she sank deeper into that place between waking and dreaming. She imagined herself as part of the story she was reading, walking slowly through an enchanted forest, the ground covered in soft moss, the air filled with the gentle scent of blooming flowers. Fireflies danced around her, their tiny lights flickering like stars brought down to earth. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and she could hear the distant sound of a babbling brook. Each step she took felt effortless, her body light and relaxed, as if the earth itself were cradling her. The magic of the forest wrapped around her like a soft blanket, filling her with a deep sense of peace. In the real world, Mr. Whitaker moved quietly through the bookstore, lighting a few more candles as the daylight faded. Their warm glow added to the soft, golden ambience of the shop, casting gentle flickering shadows that danced across the walls. He knew that the more comforting the environment, the deeper people could relax, and he enjoyed creating a space where people felt safe and calm, like they had stepped into another world. Emma dreamed of the bookstore, but it was different. In her dream, the shelves stretched endlessly, filled with books that glowed softly in the dim light. She wandered through the aisles, her fingers brushing against the glowing spines, each one humming with its own quiet magic. She felt a sense of wonder, knowing that every book held a world waiting to be discovered, each one a door to a new adventure. The dream shifted, and she found herself by the fireplace, but instead of the cozy reading area, there was a grand library, its ceiling high above her, painted with scenes of starry skies and drifting clouds. The fire burned brightly, its warmth filling the vast room. She saw Mr. Whitaker, his eyes twinkling, gesturing for her to come closer. He held out a book, its cover shimmering with golden light. "This one is for you," he said, his voice echoing softly in the dream. Emma took the book, feeling its weight in her hands, and as she opened it, a gentle breeze seemed to flow from its pages, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and distant oceans. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace, knowing that she was safe, that she was home, surrounded by stories and warmth. Slowly, Emma began to wake, her eyes fluttering open to the sight of the cozy bookstore around her. The fire still crackled, Oliver still purred on her lap, and the soft rain continued to fall outside. She took a deep breath, feeling the lingering magic of her dream, and smiled. The bookstore was still as perfect as ever, a place where dreams and reality intertwined, where stories wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Emma looked at the book in her lap, running her fingers over the silver letters on the cover. She knew she would be back, that there were more stories to discover, more dreams to be dreamed in the cozy little bookstore at the corner of Rosewood Lane. As the afternoon turned into evening, the rain outside began to let up, and a soft twilight glow filled the shop. The gentle light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the shelves. The few other visitors in the bookstore began to gather their things, giving Emma friendly nods as they left, their footsteps echoing softly as they stepped back out into the damp streets of Marigold. Emma stayed, savoring the peaceful quiet of the bookstore as the day wound down. Mr. Whitaker approached a chair, carrying a steaming cup of chamomile tea. "Thought you might like a little something warm to end the day," he said with a kind smile. Emma took the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around it and feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. The comforting aroma of chamomile filled the air, adding to the serene atmosphere. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply, letting the warmth of the tea and the scent fill her senses, relaxing her further. "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker," Emma said, her voice soft. She took a sip, the tea warming her from the inside out. She looked around the bookstore, taking in the sight of the flickering fire, the rows of books, and Oliver curled up contentedly in her lap. It felt like time had slowed to a gentle crawl, each moment stretching out and filling her with a sense of deep tranquility. Mr. Whitaker settled into the armchair across from her, a book resting on his knee. "You know, Emma," he began, his eyes twinkling, "I've always believed that bookstores are a kind of magic, a place where the ordinary world fades away, and anything is possible. You can travel anywhere, be anyone, and discover wonders you never imagined, all without ever leaving your chair." Emma nodded, a smile touching her lips. "I think you're right," she replied. "There's something about being surrounded by stories that makes everything else seem less important. It's like being part of something bigger." Mr. Whitaker chuckled softly. "Exactly. It's a kind of magic that never fades, no matter how many times you visit, and each person who comes through that door brings their own bit of magic with them. New stories, new dreams. That's what keeps this place alive." The two of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling gently, the warmth of the tea seeping through Emma's body. Outside, the sky had darkened, and the first stars were beginning to twinkle above the rooftops of Marigold. The soft glow of the streetlights illuminated the rain-soaked streets, and the town seemed to settle into a peaceful stillness, the bustle of the day giving way to the quiet of the night. Emma finished her tea, setting the cup on the small table beside her chair. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment, letting herself soak in the feeling of absolute calm. She could hear Mr. Whitaker turning the pages of his book, the gentle rustle adding to the symphony of cozy sounds that filled the room. Oliver shifted slightly in her lap, his purring never ceasing, a constant, soothing presence. The gentle atmosphere of the bookstore seemed to wrap itself around Emma like a comforting blanket. She could feel her body sinking deeper into the soft armchair, her muscles relaxing completely. The warmth from the fireplace made the room feel like a cocoon, safe and inviting, while the rain outside provided a rhythmic lullaby that seemed to harmonize with Oliver's purring. She listened to the soft creaking of the old wooden floorboards as Mr. Whitaker moved around the store, each step like a gentle reminder of the presence of someone kind and familiar. Eventually, Emma opened her eyes and looked at Mr. Whitaker. "I think I'll take this one with me," she said, holding up The Dreamer's Tales. He nodded approvingly. "A fine choice. It's one of my favorites." He rose from his chair, taking the book from her to wrap it carefully in brown paper, tying it with a piece of twine. He handed it back to her, and she felt a sense of excitement at the thought of reading more of the stories within its pages. As she stood to leave, Oliver jumped down from her lap, giving a long, lazy stretch before trotting over to his favorite cushion by the fireplace. Emma smiled, giving the cat a gentle pat on the head before turning back to Mr. Whitaker. "Thank you for everything," she said. "You're always welcome here, Emma," Mr. Whitaker replied, his voice warm and sincere. "May your dreams be filled with wonderful stories and gentle magic." Emma stepped out into the cool night, the bell above the door giving one last sweet chime as it closed behind her. She walked slowly down Rosewood Lane, the wrapped book held close to her chest. The town was quiet, the air fresh from the rain, and the stars above seemed to shine just a little brighter. She felt a sense of contentment, of belonging, as if she carried a piece of the bookstore's magic with her. When she reached a small cottage at the edge of town, Emma lit a candle and settled into her favorite armchair by the window. She unwrapped the book, running her fingers over the cover once more before opening to the first page. The words seemed to glow in the candlelight, and as she began to read, she felt the world around her fade away, replaced by the vivid images the story painted in her mind. The soft rustling of the pages, the flickering candlelight, and the memory of the cozy bookstore all wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Emma knew she would sleep well tonight, her dreams filled with enchanted woods, grand libraries, and the warmth of stories yet to be told. She imagined the warmth of the fire, the scent of old books, and the gentle sound of the rain tapping against the window, all merging into a symphony of tranquility that filled her senses. As she read on, her eyes grew heavy, her body sinking deeper into the plush armchair. The words of the story became soft whispers, guiding her to a peaceful place where everything felt gentle and serene. Emma placed the book on the small table beside her and leaned back, allowing herself to drift away. The glow of the candle flickered gently, and the room seemed to grow even cozier, the warmth wrapping around her like a protective hug. She closed her eyes, the story she had just read still fresh in her mind, and allowed her thoughts to wander back to the enchanted forest and the magical library of her dreams. In her imagination, she walked along mossy paths, the forest surrounding her in its gentle embrace. She could see the fireflies dancing in the twilight, their tiny lights like stars, and she felt the cool breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers. Each breath she took seemed to fill her with peace, a sense of being exactly where she was meant to be. Slowly, she drifted further into sleep, the sounds of the quiet night lulling her deeper into a world of dreams. She imagined herself back in the bookstore, sitting by the warm fire, with Oliver purring by her side and Mr. Whitaker reading quietly in the corner. The soft glow of candlelight filled the room, and the gentle music from the old record player provided a soothing melody that carried her away. Emma's breathing grew slow and steady, her body completely relaxed as she surrendered to the comfort of sleep. The memories of the cozy bookstore, the scent of the pages, the warmth of the fire, and the gentle purring of the cat all blended together, creating a dreamscape of comfort and warmth. Outside, the town of Marigold was still and peaceful, the soft glow of the streetlights casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The rain had stopped, and the stars twinkled brightly in the clear sky above, watching over the quiet town as it rested. In her dreams, Emma walked through a forest filled with light and magic, following a path that led her deeper into the heart of the enchanted world. She felt no fear, only the joy of exploration and the gentle wonder of the unknown. The forest whispered to her, the leaves rustling softly in the breeze, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and blooming flowers. She could hear the faint sound of a brook nearby, its waters bubbling over smooth stones, and she made her way towards it, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet. The forest was alive, yet calm, each sound and movement a part of the natural symphony that surrounded her. As she knelt by the brook, dipping her fingers into the cool, clear water, she looked up at the sky. The stars above shone brightly, their light reflected in the water, and she felt a deep connection to the world around her. It was as if the boundaries between her and the forest had disappeared, and she was simply a part of the magic, one with the earth and the sky and everything in between. Emma's dream was filled with warmth and wonder, and as she walked through the forest, she felt a sense of belonging that wrapped around her like a blanket. She knew she was home, not just in her cottage or the bookstore, but within herself, in the world of stories and dreams that had always been a part of her. The night deepened, and the gentle magic of the cozy bookstore and the enchanted forest filled her dreams. And as the candle beside her flickered and finally went out, Emma smiled softly in her sleep, her heart full, her spirit at peace, and her mind wrapped in the gentle whispers of a world where dreams and reality intertwined. Thank you for joining us tonight at Snooze Tales Studio. May your dreams be filled with the warmth of stories, the crackle of a cozy fire, and the gentle magic of rainy days. Good night, dear listeners, and may you always find comfort in the pages of a good book.